I've never been particularly fond of the mystery genre. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't enjoyed it from time to time or that I don't get the appeal or anything, but particularly when it comes to video games, it's one genre I've never really sought out intentionally. I think a big reason, for me at least, is mystery really is one of the worst genres when it comes to replayability. The entire appeal really is the journey to find the answer to something, but once you finish the game and have that answer, well, playing it again is never really going to have the same impact. It's like a puzzle, an interesting challenge while you figure it out, but once you've fully solved it, there's no real enjoyment to be had doing it again from scratch. So, for the majority of my life, I just kind of ignored the genre. And yet, somehow, very recently, the stars aligned, and I ended up owning this puzzle mystery series, the Nonary Collection. Let's start from the top here. The Nonary Collection, also known as the Zero Escape series, is a trilogy of Escape the Room visual novels by Spike Chunsoft. They are probably most well known for working on the visionary masterpiece that is Conception 2 Children of the Seven and Ropa series, which, if I'm being honest, I always kind of felt was a series beneath me, but now I'm probably going to end up binging the entire series at some point in the future. Anyways, the series initially released in 2009 on the DS, but didn't get actually completed until 2016, 7 years later. The entire premise is based around something known as the Nonary game. Now, what exactly the Nonary game is varies a bit from game to game, but has a few key rules. First, 9 people are locked away in some sort of highly elaborate facility. This place varies wildly from game to game, but the most important feature is that it is cut off from the outside world save for one exit. This exit will open exactly once after certain conditions are met, then after a short while will close, never to open again. Secondly, this game is always emceed by a mysterious entity known as Zero. Who exactly Zero is one of the mysteries of the game. And finally, thirdly, if you're having trouble getting out of this game, death is always an option. Anyways, as I mentioned, there's one door to escape, but how exactly are the players supposed to reach that door? And again, this varies from game to game, but generally involves the 9 players getting locked in various rooms, solving various puzzles in order to escape said rooms, which usually ends up providing them with a key, which usually leads to more escape rooms, and then more keys into more escape rooms, etc, 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 until eventually, hopefully, they lead to a way to open the final door and escape. So, at its core, the Nonary game is very much your basic escape the room type of game that's become so popular in this past decade. However, that isn't really the focus of the game. Sure, the escape from the facility and the puzzles that lead to it are the main goal, as it were, the motivating factor behind the characters, but the real essence of the game, the core for the player, is on the mystery. The rules of the game are plainly laid out before you from the beginning. The framework of how you advance, how you escape, all that is given to you almost immediately. But everything else, I mean almost everything else, is entirely left blank. You are some schmo, varying from game to game, who got dragged into the situation for God knows what reason. You'll usually get a little bit of a backstory on your main character to get the gist of their personality, but that's about it. The other 8 people stuck here with you are complete strangers. Oh sure, maybe your main character might recognize one face in the crowd, or maybe 2 characters will be related or something, but for the most part, everybody is a stranger to everybody else. Who's this guy in the ringleader outfit? Why does this guy have amnesia? Why does she think it's okay to dress like that? All are answers that you'll eventually find over the course of the game. Except for why she dresses like that. There's never really a good answer for that, but there's always one. Anyways, like I said, that is the focus of this game. Who are you? Who are these people? Why are we here playing this Nonary game? What's the point of putting us through this trial? What's with this place that we're stuck in? For what reason did Zero pick us 9 in particular? I mean, who is Zero? Question upon question upon question. So many questions for one game to answer. So, to accomplish the Herculean task of answering everything, the game relies heavily on multiple endings. Now, while good and bad endings are certainly nothing new to this kind of genre, Zero Escape subscribes heavily to the idea that you have to finish every bad ending before you get your true ending. I mean, how can you eat your pudding if you don't eat your meat? But rather than making you feel like an idiot and going, "Oh, you screwed up, you idiot, you didn't follow the very elaborate steps that it takes to get a true ending," instead, almost every ending has importance. Each ending gives a little bit of detail to some facet of the game. Perhaps it'll give you the backstory of a certain character, or explain something about the game itself, or maybe it'll Chekhov's gun a new development into the overall storyline. With this structure, the game is able to create a mostly straightforward storyline that the player can easily follow, while still making sure that no character or plot point feels completely superfluous, as, depending on what route you're on, certain characters will get more or less of your time. Also, to help with this, to prevent the game from becoming entirely tedious, it provides you with a fairly intuitive flowchart that allows you to jump back and forth to important decision points within the storyline. It honestly creates this beautiful tapestry of a plot. Every path changes something. Sometimes it's something small, like you just get to talk to a different character, or sometimes it changes the entire outcome of the game. And just about every time, you'll get an answer to something. Sometimes that answer will just be something small, nearly insignificant. Sometimes that answer will just create 3 more questions that you didn't know you had. But other times it'll give you a hint that allows you to solve a whole bunch of questions that you had. I think a problem that a lot of creators have when creating mystery is trouble creating elements that aren't either overly predictable or so convoluted as to be impossible to guess. The Nonary game has so many questions floating around that I feel like the answers fall all over the place on this scale, but it never really leaves you dissatisfied. Even if the occasional question falls on one of the far ends of the spectrum, there's always so many more questions still waiting to be answered that you can't just dwell on it. Like any truly great page-turning novel, you just want to keep finding out more. You want to keep hunting for answers, finding solutions to puzzles, backstories to characters, resolutions to mysteries, until suddenly you realize it's 3 in the morning and you have to wake up in 4 hours. Now, before I continue kissing this game's ass so much that I start to see my own reflection in it, it's worth noting that no game is perfect, and this game certainly has its fair share of flaws. The actual quality of the puzzles is something I've been avoiding mentioning, as while I don't think I'm exactly the best person to ask about this sort of thing, they aren't exactly amazing. Rather than what I would consider to be a typical puzzle, most of the rooms just come down to clicking around a whole bunch of objects until you find enough hints that basically just tell you how to solve the puzzle, then solve it. That's not to say that there weren't a few moments here or there where I leaned back in my chair with a smug, self-satisfied grin plastered on my face, but for a lot of the rooms, the most difficult part was just figuring out which monitors and levers I was meant to pull and which were just background set dressing. The series also suffers from the same thing that I think a lot of trilogies suffer from, in that it kind of peters off at the end. The first is a great starting point that provides a lot of info on the world that we're in and how things work. The second expands on the first and creates what I consider to be one of the best start-to-finish plot rides I have ever experienced. But then we reach the finale, and it isn't bad or anything. I mean, it closes up a bunch of loose plot threads and has some truly powerful moments, but ultimately the final twist is nowhere near as good as the second, and the whole thing feels a little rushed. Also, this might just be me, but I feel like all the new characters they added in the third game were not nearly as developed as ones in the past. Anyways, my last complaint is that, even with the flowchart system going on, expect to watch a couple scenes more than you would like. I hope you like Sigma recounting how he got caught up in all this, because you only have to watch it 6 unskippable times. But these are but a few small speckles staining the otherwise pristine latrine that is the Nonary collection. I don't know where that metaphor came from. It's been a long time since I've been this invested in a group of video game characters. They act, honestly, how I imagine a lot of people put into this sort of situation would act. And even when they sometimes don't, there's always an explanation hidden away on why they're doing so. Thanks to the game's diverging paths, you're guaranteed to spend at least some of your time with every other character, and all of them start to feel important to the plot. Who's a trustworthy ally who'll stick with you until the very end and try to make sure that everyone escapes with you? Who's a conniving asshole who would happily leave everyone to die if it meant they got several seconds more of sweet, sweet freedom? Who's ally? Who's foe? Are they thieves, villains, murderers? Is one of them Zero? Are you Zero? You might know a bit of backstory about your player character, but how much do you really know about them? Ultimately, the Zero Escape series is a masterful piece of work. For me, it was that rare opportunity to step outside my usual comfort zone and try something I had originally deemed not worth my time, only to be blown away by all that I had been missing with that line of thinking. The experience from start to finish was a wild ride that I was so happy to be a part of. I think the best sign of any truly great story is the feelings you're left with when it's done. An exuberance at finally having all your questions answered, a desire to play more, to experience more of it, and finally, a small but very present twinge of regret. Not at playing the game, obviously, but at knowing that never again will you ever get to experience this game for the first time. It's a very bittersweet feeling that I've experienced several times before, and I hope to experience many more times from now. And the Nonary game certainly brought out that emotion in me. I hope that this video can help convince somebody out there that this series really is worth giving a shot.
The number 9 door has closed. This ends the Nonary game.